In the meantime, President Cyril Ramaphosa says South Africa's presidency of the G20 will amplify Africa's voice and prioritize the continent's development needs. As the first African nation to lead the grouping, South Africa aims to address poverty, unemployment, inequality, climate change, and debt. South Africa has taken over the rotation presidency of the G20, vowing to put Africa's priorities at the forefront. President Ramaphosa says this is a momentous occasion for the continent and developing countries. South Africa will focus on tackling poverty, unemployment, and inequalities, as well as addressing climate change and energy, food security, and debt. The country aims to bring an African perspective to global governance and reform. Now, to further discuss this, I beg your pardon. To further discuss this, I'm joined by Godson Azu, Global Affairs Analyst. Godson, good evening. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, good evening. It's my great pleasure joining you this evening here.
Okay.
From here in
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Okay. So what do you believe South Africa's presidency of the G20 means for Africa's influence in global economic and also political discussions?
Well, I think it's one of the greatest things that will happen to Africa as a continent at the moment. It's rather unfortunate that South Africa is taking the place of Nigeria in global affairs discussions. And for me, I think it should have been the right place for Nigeria, based on Nigeria's population and demography and its economy, to be in the position where South Africa is today, sitting at the table, global table of discourse, to discuss the greatest interests of Africa at the new global agenda. We all see South Africa playing a role that unfortunately they found themselves in with the gap Nigeria created as a result of our inability to be well organized as a state, as a government, as a people, and also to be focused in our foreign policy direction. We can say that in the last 30 years, since 1994 till date, since South Africa overcome the apartheid era and became a self-governing state within itself, they've been able to shape their relationship within the global arena in order to find a space where they can play a major role. And as such, they've been able to drive their interest to the tables of discussion in global agenda, either it be at the G20 or the BRICS, or even at the EU, even at the United Nations. And that is what you expect from an emerging economy. That's what we're expecting from a country that is building a global presence in a modern day society. We all know that what South Africa is doing is for the greater benefit of Africa, as long as they try to protect the interest of African development, African survival, African resonance in global affairs. And I think Nigeria needs to wake up to this reality and begin to strengthen its further relationship with South Africa in order to find a buy-in in this whole affairs as the world continues to re-emerge from its unipolar, bipolar to multipolar global order. And as such, the only way Nigeria or Africa can be relevant is when the voices continue to rise at the tables of discussion. It's very, very admirable and commendable that South Africa in the last 30 or 20-something years now has been playing that major role by being the voice of Africa at this global economic roundtable and political circles around the world.
A phrase that you used where you said Nigeria has to wake up to responsibility, implying that Nigeria is the sleeping giant of Africa, so I get it there. But President Ramaphosa has emphasized tackling poverty, inequality, climate change during the G20 presidency. How would Nigeria have done any better if Nigeria was in this position like you have just suggested?
Yeah, of course, Nigeria would have done better because it's all about population. It's all about the demography. It's all about the economy. It's all about the power to negotiate. It's all about the ability to be seen at the table of discussion. Nigeria needs to work harder to be seen as a key player in African affairs and not just a regional player and not just being an invited guest to global affairs. We need to be one that is at the forefront of these opportunities when they come up at any point, at any time, because this is the only way we can begin to show our strength. This is the only way we can begin to show our leadership role. This is the only way we can show that Nigeria is ready to take up challenges on behalf of Africa. South Africa is less than 50 million people in population, if I'm not mistaken. But you can compare that with a Nigerian population of about 220 million. That's a huge market. That's a huge economy. That's a huge population for global interventions. And so we need to move from non-alignment or alignment procedures and to be part of the discourse. And we can only be part of discourse if we begin to change our foreign policy dynamics. We begin to change our ideological strands in the way we approach international issues. There's two key directions in the international community. Either you are a liberal or you're a realist.
Okay, Mr. Azu. Mr. Azu, so now let's talk about the influence of leadership of these two different countries now, Nigeria and South Africa. First off, I want to say let's give South Africa its laurels for getting this position. But how do you think South Africa's leadership will impact the relationship between Africa and the global powers, such as the US and China? And if you put Nigerian leadership in that position, how would it fare as well?
Well, the dynamics of South Africa is quite different from the dynamics of Nigeria. South Africa is made up of racial combinations of people from even Europe, people from the US, people from the United Kingdom, people from India, people from Asia, all make up a lot of the population's growth of South Africa. And its politics is woven around this race nationalities that build up the entire nations of South Africa and its economy. And so there's a lot of internal influence to how South Africa approach their external relationship with other countries. And so South Africa, the president is doing whatever he can to sustain the liberal influence of South Africa in the global discourse, because all the institutions around the world are institutions that are driven by liberal agenda. The liberal agenda says that states cannot be the determining factor in how global affairs are resolved, but that people should come together and cooperate and collaborate and share ideas and values that will enable peace, trade, economy to grow among nations. And so, but you look at, and that is the principle whereby South Africa is pitching his tent in order to be part of that global discourse. You need to showcase your foreign policy dynamics, your ideological strands in terms of your power of engagement and power of discourse. And as such, Ramaphosa has been doing what he can to make South Africa relevant in every of these discourse, and as such, using South Africa as a kind of an instrument to reposition Africans' interests in the global divide. Because what we're talking about now is a multipolar society or a multipolar world order where US, China, European Union are beginning to determine what happens around the world. And where is Africa? Somebody needs to bring Africa to the table at all times. Somebody needs to mention Africa at all times of discussions around the global discourse, whether it be at the G20, whether it be at BRICS, whether it be at the UN, whether it be at IMF, whether it be at World Trade, whether anywhere that issues concerning the global world order needs to be discussed, Africa needs to have a voice. And that voice has to be led by a certain leadership. And if South Africa has found itself in that position, we all need to support South Africa to ensure that they keep making Africa relevant at the global discourse. And if, as the agenda drives further on, and Nigeria begin to build a very strong and reliable relationship with South Africa, then South Africa and Nigeria will ensure that whatever that will drive Africa prosperity is collectively driven by these two leaders, because the Global South needs strong leadership, and strong leadership can only be achieved by a constructive governance system, a strong economy, and a collective agenda that is driven by an understanding of the leadership that are driving this purposeful agenda on behalf of Africa. So I would say Ramaphosa, kudos to him for what he's doing on behalf of Africa at the G20. I'm sure his presence and his words and his speeches at the G20, his representation at the G20 would enable Africa to begin to have a greater gain of its resources, greater gain to his resources.
All right, Mr.
Because
Azu.
we have lost, Africa is losing his resources at the expense of the developed countries.
All right.
And now we need to begin to challenge the developed countries on why Africa needs to be a net gainer of its own resources for its own people. And
Mr. Godson, you're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. Africa does need to challenge the rest of the world. We have to put a wrap on it here for that subject. But thank you very much, Mr. Godson Azu, for joining us and giving us your expert opinion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My pleasure. Thank you very much.